Okay, you've been feeding and caring for your worms for a few weeks now and you're wondering, what's next? How do I know when to harvest the castings? And how the heck do I get them out of the bin? Well, I've got answers for you, so let's get worming. The first step is recognizing when your bin is ready to harvest castings. As your worms eat their way through the food and cardboard, you'll start to see less cardboard and more dark, rich soil, which is exactly what you want. Keep feeding and adding a new layer of cardboard each week until eventually your bin is so full of great soil that there's no more room to add another layer of food on top. At this point, stop feeding the bin and wait 2 weeks. Don't worry, your worms will be okay without food for 2 weeks, and you want them hungry for harvesting. Now there are multiple ways that you can harvest your castings, and I'm going to go over 4 of them. Method 1, bin stacking. In a previous video, we went over how to start a worm bin. Click here if you want to see that, but a key part of that was taking a new bin and drilling holes in the bottom for drainage. For this first harvest method, you do the same thing. Drill in holes in the new bin and then add a layer of moist shredded cardboard and some food along the bottom. Then you'll set the new bin on top of the bin that you want to harvest. Because the worms are hungry, they're going to crawl up from the bottom bin through the holes and into the fresh new bin that you just created, leaving you with mostly worm-free castings from the harvest from the bin and giving you a new bin full of worms to begin feeding and growing your next batch of castings in. The pros of this method, it's very little work on your end. Of all the methods, this is the least labor intensive. The cons, it's going to take a while for your worms to crawl up into the new bin. It could take a couple of weeks or it could take a month. You need to periodically dig through your bin to see if the worms have finished migrating. Another option is to screen out your castings. To do this, take a screen like this one. I'll link to this specific one below, but if you're handy, you could also make your own with a 1/8 inch screen. To harvest, you'll put the screen over an empty bin and place your castings in the screen and start sifting. And you'll notice it catches the bigger debris, but it also catches all the little worms in here too. So the screen's big enough to let the castings through, but small enough to catch the bigger debris and the worms. So at this point you have 2 options. You could sift through this entire bin, which will take you a while, and then remove all the worms that you've sifted and put them in a fresh new bin. Or you could sift out what you need for the day and just take the worms back into its original bin. The pros of this method, it's fast and highly effective. The cons, it's a little bit more labor intensive. It's going to take you some time and effort to sift through this whole bin. And the worms do get shaken up a bit in case you were worried about their feelings. Next, we have the light method. Basically, worms hate light, which makes sense considering that their natural habitat is underground. So for this harvesting method, you put a bright light over your bin, and then you're going to wait about an hour to give them time to crawl deeper into the soil. Then you can just take a trowel and start scraping a thin layer off the top until you reach where the worms have crawled down into. You know, there's like a worm there, so I'll wait a little bit longer for them to crawl deeper. And then you can continue to harvest that way. The pros, it's pretty easy and it only requires a light. The cons, you don't get a lot of castings at a time compared to the other methods where you can harvest the entire bin. And finally, we have the bait method. And by bait, I mean exactly that. You're baiting your hungry worms with food. So for this method, on one end of your full bin, place something that the worms love to eat. I usually use cantaloupe or watermelon. I found that the sugary fruit is a big hit with my worms. Today I'm going to use cantaloupe rinds. So once you have your bait in place, it should only take a few days for your most hungry worms to congregate onto the food. Now that all of your worms are on one end of the bin, you can start harvesting the castings from the other. When you're done, you could start adding shredded cardboard and food slowly to the now empty side of the bed to encourage the worms to migrate back and begin the casting cycle all over again. The pros of this method: you're doing all the work in the same bin, so it doesn't take as much room and it isn't as messy as some of the other methods. And you get more castings at a time than you would with, say, like the light method. The cons: not all of your worms will migrate to the food. Odds are that there will be some worms in your castings that you harvest, which means that you will lose some working worms from your bin. I've tried all of these methods, and personally, I prefer the bait method the most. But that doesn't mean that that's the best choice for you. I suggest you try a few and see which one you like the most. But no matter which method you use, remember, for your castings to be most effective, you should only harvest as much as you need. The longer your castings sit around, the less potent they will be. So once you harvest them, use them on indoor plants, sprinkle around the garden plants, or use them to start some seedlings. And do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe button. It sure would help this old worm farmer out. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.